Okay, so there we are. From May 22. Oh, sorry, this is a continuation of. I don't even know what I'm going to call this video. I guess I'll just call it updates or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, so there we were. It was May of 2021. I was in this office with my friend who's an attorney, and he was a witness. And Maria's attorney walked in the room, and immediately I could just, like, you know how you could just get those feelings, and that this is total. This guy is like a total. He's completely out of his league, first of all, and he sensed that from the moment he walked in the room. He was extremely nervous, and like, if you're telling the truth, you don't need to be nervous. It's okay, you don't. Nobody's here. This is a council meeting. You don't have to worry about some wildly emotional person jumping across the table to rip your throat out. I just want to get to the facts, son. So I advised him that I said I spoke with your client on these days, and based on this information, she needs to do one of the two options. She should either revise the price of the contract and settle the purchase now with what she has received, which by that point was almost 1.2 million pesos. But I had stopped making payments. And I think, I can't remember, I want to say November or December. Yeah, of the previous year. And I want to make sure I got that right. It was May of 2022. If I didn't get that right, it's 2022 May. In the office, guy's really nervous. I told him that your client needs to either revise the price or we need to move for renovation upon eviction. Which one is it? And he just, like, very arrogantly, he was like, neither. And I'm like, okay, right. And in the meantime, I had also come to learn, well, I hadn't learned it just for sure, but I had heard through the grapevine that Maria didn't own that property. I didn't know it at the time, obviously, but hindsight came to provide that she had entered an agreement in July 2020 to buy the land for 600,000 pesos. She put down 300,000 and never made another payment since then. So you don't own something until you finish paying for it, right? If it's on a contract and you're making monthly payments, you're not allowed to let or sublet or resale that property. So I said, my next question to the attorney for Maria was, I said, well, okay, if you don't want to do contract revision price and you don't want to do renovation upon eviction, which is basically your only two options according to this contract that I'm looking at, before it's escalated. But before we discuss that, could you provide me with the material evidence, not just to support your client's claim of the value of the land, but also to support her claim that she does own the land? And with that, the guy that was already nervous and stuff, he almost pissed himself. And he said to me that if I wanted to get the proof of Maria's ownership of that land, that I should get in my car and make an 8-hour round trip journey in my car, not to mention however many hours sitting in the notary's office up there in Tepic. And he didn't even specify which notary. There's like 30 of them or something. So I'm just supposed to wander all over Tepic over the course of several days or several weeks, trying to look for some office that might contain this information to support Maria's claims that she owns the land. I said, I'm sorry, young man. I don't know what reality that you're occupying, but in this context, in this room, we're in a legal setting. So let me make that clear for the record. What you're suggesting that I do is I drive to Tepic at my own expense and use my own time to go wandering aimlessly looking for evidence to support your client's claim? Did you really just say that? It's not my job. It's not my role. It's not my responsibility. It is not my duty in any way, shape, or form to provide evidence to support your client's claims. That's your job, son. So I ask you one more time. Please provide me with the material evidence to support your client's claim of ownership and land value. And with that, he mumbled something. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was incoherent. He was very, very upset and nervous, and rightfully so. And he just got up and left the office. We'd scheduled like an hour to an hour and a half for this co-counsel forum so we could go over all the different possibilities and make sure we, did everything that we could do before we escalate it, right? That's due process, right? And so he got up. He wasn't in there maybe 5 minutes, 10 at the most. And he ran out of the office. Okay, so what do you do then? That's your attorney, and that's the way he communicates, and that's, I don't know. Again, just all I can do is just scratch my head and makes you go, huh? So that was May 2021, and then I didn't hear anything from anybody until about August of the next year. Or was it August? No, sorry, my bad. August of the same year. So 3 months after this co-counsel meeting where all of my offers were refused and Maria's attorney refused to provide the material evidence to support her claims. Now this attorney's going to go file on Maria's half an escalation called a demand. And it was on the 8th of August, I think it was, in 2022, that a group of 3 people, one and the only one I knew was this Lewis guy, Maria's attorney, showed up at my doorstep, banging on the door, banging on the windows, looking in the windows, screaming and hollering, wouldn't fucking leave. I told them to leave. They were there probably at least 35, 40 minutes, banging on it, looking. I kept, get off the property. I'm going to tell you, get off the property. Do not make me come out there and remove you from the property. Just leave. And, I think I threatened to call the police or something, but like I said, I don't even know how to do that. I think it's 911 or something like that, but good luck you'll be on hold for 20, 30 minutes, and some guy will pick up the phone in Mexico City and route your call based on whatever digits are in your phone number, thinking that, you're calling in Chiapas when you're actually in Nayarit. So yeah, it just was like, nah, that's not a viable option. But and so they were out there banging on the door. They wouldn't leave. They're just being very violent and just, So I did eventually I felt like I had to open up the door and grab a hold of the first person that was, standing in my personal space. And I applied a very, very minimal amount of pressure in order to convince her to get off my property. A very effective maneuver, but it doesn't do any harm to the body, right? There's no broken bones, no blood, no bruises, nothing. And of course she screamed bloody murder, as you do. In the Kali Yuga, the wicked feminine goes around initiating all kinds of violence against other people, and then when the violence is returned, she screams and cries that she's the victim. Gotta love it. So she did leave, but these papers that they were trying to force me to sign, they're like, you need to open up the door and sign for these papers. I'm like, I don't need to do shit. The only thing that needs to be done is you need to get up off of my property before somebody gets hurt. They wouldn't listen, and it just kept on. So I went out there and removed them. And then these papers that they were trying to get me to sign, as they were running, they threw them at me. And they landed on the ground and they jumped in their car as fast as they could and tried to roll up the windows. And I went over and I shoved my hand through, not my hand, but the papers through the car window and said, "You take your fucking papers back. There's only one way to get in touch with me. If you have a method, if you have a reason to communicate with me, all right? I don't care who you are. But especially if you're calling from, like, if you're not calling from, but if you're, like, your purpose of your communication is to be for something legal or lawful, there's only one method available, and that is by the Mexican post office." Why is that, Teddy? Because if you use the Mexican post office to knowingly commit fraud, it's a federal offense and you go straight to jail. Yeah, I shoved the paperwork back at them, and then they were rolling up the windows trying to get away as fast as they could, and then they, just as they were peeling out, they opened up one of the windows and threw the papers on the ground, and I fucking didn't care. I left him sitting there, and then my neighbor went and picked him up later, and he's like, "Teddy, you need to respond to this. It's a demand." And I was like, fuck that. I'm not responding to anything. I don't recognize that. That's violent trespass is not an authorized or permitted method of communication with me. Period. It's not. So if you're going to come up in here and try to communicate with me in a way that is not acceptable to me, I'm not going to recognize it. And I don't have to. He's like, no, you should answer it. So here, he's pointing it out in this letter that I should answer this demand. And despite the fact, now this is August of 2022. So here we are, 17 months after the initial promissory note, and a year since I told Maria to provide evidence of her claims, and 3 months post telling her attorney to provide evidence to support her claims. So you see, failure. Then they bring this demand. It's like, how do you even get to escalate this? Like, okay, maybe you can escalate this because maybe somebody at the courthouse wasn't aware that you and I had a co-counsel, and I extended multiple offers to you, all of which you refused. And I extended to you the opportunity to provide evidence of supportive claim, which you likewise refused. And so now maybe we do need to escalate it into this situation, because then I can go in front of somebody that calls himself a judge and say, "Look, judge, here's your civil paperwork. Here's your contract. It's in the civil court right here in your jurisdiction. Read this clause and read that clause and tell me that she has the right to demand this money." And if you want to choose to believe that, then I still do need to see evidence of ownership. So they filed this demand, and unlike me having given them months to answer and provide evidence of claim, they gave me 8 days. 8 days to respond to the demand. And I did. And I made note of the facts. And I said, this is all that I have to hand at this moment. And as I come across some more information, I will provide a continuance to this answer of the demand. And then we will move forward from there. I'll be ready to present all the evidence. And so I did over the next couple of weeks. I gathered up some more evidence and I presented it in my case. And I also indicated that I had met with the attorney who had refused all the offers. So at this point, the other side is being completely belligerent, not willing to negotiate, not willing to abide by the contract terms, just force me to continue paying for something that is not hers. And so anyway, I made a note of all this in the court documents, in the answer to the demand. And I waited. I said, and I will, because I am an honorable person and I want to make sure everybody has ample opportunity, I will provide another 90 days with the possibility of an extension for another 90 days beyond that, so up to 180 days, for Maria to provide evidence of claim. which is something that should be in the case file before you start to write escritorias and promissory notes and contracts for sale. That's the basic shit that needs to be done by a real estate agent or a real estate broker or a real estate attorney. It's called a title search. Anyway. And 180 days went by. Not a word, not a word. So I sent my last letter, and this one was called the final communique. And in this letter, I specifically reminded them that I have extended these offers. There has been complete belligerence on the other side, complete refusal to abide by the terms and conditions of the contract, and complete refusal to provide even evidence of claim. So for these reasons, and I think I had, oh yes, I did. I had a piece of evidence of my own that was not, sorry, this ground is really hard. A piece of evidence in my favor that was not generated by me. It was offered, volunteered by a third party that I don't even know, saying that, he was the attorney for the guy that sold the land to Maria, and he said, confirmed, she hasn't made her payments. She's, however many years behind on her payments, and so she doesn't own the land. And despite this evidence and witness, third-party witness, I don't even know this guy, right? And he's speaking up on my behalf in the court. And despite this, or rather, because of this is the evidence that I'm using to support my claim that Maria does not own the land and therefore does not have any rights to continue to demand any money from me, but rather Maria needs to return the money that I paid to her. And that was the instructions I gave to the judge. And, or not the instructions, but here's the evidence, and this is the right thing to do at this point, right? So, what was next? I think it was also in the final communique, and I can't remember exactly when the final communique, I think it might have also still been August, so I did all this in less than a month. 10 days, 12 days, I think it took me for the whole thing. So I submitted the final communique, presented all this background information, circumstances, evidence, blah, blah, blah. And then I concluded with, I said, if I can figure this out as a gringo who's pretty much brand new here, doesn't hardly speak any English, and I sure as hell don't run in circles of the real estate business or the courthouse business or the attorney business. So I don't know where to go and find this information. I don't know how to, I don't know how the system works here. I don't have any contacts. I don't have any accesses to databases or government websites. I don't know shit, right? But here you are, Judge. You got a staff of 12 people or something in your office, at least 12 people that I can see. Maybe there's more. I don't know. It's at least 12 people in that courthouse. All of them fluent in Spanish. Every one of them has a background in this business. All of them well connected within the community of other people that are in this business, and they know where to go and what to do and who to call to find out whatever they're wanting to find out. But you've had this case in your courthouse. Ramon was his name, the judge. I said, but you've had this case in your courthouse with all your access to resources and staff and time for years, and you're unable to deter. It would appear to me that if I can find this information out in 5 to 10 days, given my situation, being new here and not having the background and the contacts and the resources and this and that and the other, it would seem very bizarre indeed if that you can't reach the same conclusion and you've had years. But I don't want to presume anything. So that was literally what I said. It said it would appear that Ramon, that you are, don't try not to laugh, because this is legal speak. This is how you question authority in the courtroom. He said, Ramon, based on the material evidence and based upon, the fact that you've got access to all these people and all this resources and everything that I don't have access to, if I can find it in 8 days and you can't find it in however many years, it would appear that you, sir, are engaged in, if not facilitating, the fraud in this case, that you are using the honorable business of the court to conduct fraud, to knowingly conduct fraud. Now, this is just my perception based on the evidence at hand and based on my observations of the behavior and the outcomes, or rather the lack of outcomes, of your staff to be able to determine who owns this piece of land. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, and here I'll give you another 90 days to write back to me and tell me, no, Tede, you're wrong. I'm not engaged in fraud, because here's the evidence that Maria owns the property. Or whatever, right? And with this, rather than just, everything's a choice, right? So I suppose at that point that the honorable judge, he had a decision to either come clean and go, yeah, you're right, Tede, you won the case. Maria, give her back her money, and blah, 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 whatever. Or he could recuse himself. And of course he chose the latter because, well, it's kind of an issue if you're a judge and there's a matter of public record that it implicates you in fraud. I mean, they're all engaged in fraud anyway. That's the purpose of the judge. That's the whole legal system's purpose, is to commit fraud. But lest one acknowledge the elephant in the room, so he recused himself. And while he was gone, okay, so where am I at? 22 minutes. I'm gonna cut that out. I'm going to cut that out with, alright, where are we now? Getting on October 2022. Alright, we'll leave it there and I'll pick it up from there in the next video.